Did you go to the gym on the boat?
I did.
All right,
Yeah,
I believe
I
you.
did. I felt like I needed to be honest. As woke up several mornings feeling like I was severely overweight.
The boys are back.
Week off.
A week off, and you've been somewhere very nice, haven't you?
Well, I took the kids on a Disney cruise. I'm a Disney guy, Jake.
Do you go to the Disney cruise for yourself or for your kids?
Maybe the kids, to be fair. But they go in kids club for like 3 hours a day. So
Nice.
I head to the bar, But no, really nice. Did Naples, Santorini, Mykonos, Hanea, which is Crete, and Rome.
Lovely. Any like semi-private gyms needing opening in any of those places?
I don't know. I should have asked around, really.
Did you go to the gym on the boat?
I did.
All right,
Yeah,
I believe you.
I did. I felt like I needed to be honest. As woke up several mornings feeling like I was severely overweight.
Yeah.
But no, it was really good. Really good. Loved it. Kids loved it. Wasn't a fan of Rome at the end. I felt like hot, dragging kids around 40-degree heat. People parking on zebra crossings, Jake, annoyed me as a Brit.
Yeah.
But we probably annoy them. So
I think there's so many things that annoy British people personally.
Yeah.
But we won't get into all of that. What we're going to get into today is
money.
The money. Breaking down the cost of our fitness studio. And just like full transparency here, we're going to reveal some numbers in terms of how much it costs for this fitness studio. But I'm going to kind of like let you lead a lot of this conversation, because anybody that knows us will know that I don't really involve myself in any of this kind of thing. I tend to, the way that my mind works is like, oh, we need this thing. Jack, can we get this thing? And you say yes, and then that's it. And, we get our distributions at the end of the month, and I never question it. So for all I know, you could be basically taking way more from the company than I do.
Yeah, I am.
But I'm cool with that. I don't mind.
It's funny because Jake doesn't actually know when he's getting paid or how much he's getting paid. He comes in his bank and he's a happy boy.
Yeah, I just like an open calendar and some money in the bank at the end of the month. Yeah.
and that's a bit of you.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about how much this cost. We're going to go on, I think, ways in which we could have saved money and probably didn't need
I think
to
in
spend.
hindsight, there's a lot of lessons learned.
A lot of lessons, yeah.
I actually think we spent probably more than we needed to at the beginning. Do you agree?
I agree. Yeah, I think we went super premium with a lot of the stuff in here, which I think is great, but I don't think would have made a single bit of difference.
No. So, I mean, if you're a personal trainer listening to this, wanting to open their own gym, or if you want to open another location or anything like that, then hopefully this will help. Obviously, we spoke about in the previous episode about opening one for under 10K, but we're going to get a little bit more detail across in this episode.
And remember, you can see our ugly faces on YouTube. So make sure if you listen to this on Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to this, make sure you go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel as well, so you can watch our ugly mugs.
Yep. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Let's start with startup costs, Jake. And now, startup costs is a funny thing because people always go under and they almost negotiate down with themselves on startup costs, thinking it's going to cost a lot less than it actually costs.
I won't need that.
And they never include things like legal fees, things like lease deposits. They normally just think about equipment and refurb.
How much is the equipment going to cost? What is the lease I need to pay? And that's it.
How much does it cost me to put a floor down?
Yeah.
And then I'm away.
Yeah.
But though you got to think of lots of things. So the total of this place cost us £41,620. Now that was that's quite a lot of money. That's a probably fair chunk of change.
And I remember being like, yeah, we did this for 40 grand.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Whoa, high
and
fives.
then we spoke to other studio owners in our WhatsApp group, and they're like, oh yeah, we did ours for under 10. And we're like, cool, okay.
And since then we've done tons of research and found out actually it's quite easy to do it under 10. But we went premium across the board here.
Yeah, and 20% of
that
that was, I mean, we'll go to it in a minute, but 20% of that were the scales, weren't they?
Oh yeah.
But
I if you're an avid listener of this podcast, you'll know that I love holidays and I'm away quite a lot. But I went to a place in Crete called Stella Island about 3 months before we opened this studio. And I walked in there, Jake, and the equipment was brand new. Aircon was lovely. There was towels on the side, all rolled up and ready. Water out the fridge to take. And I thought, this is what
needs to be
the studio needs to feel like, right? So they can walk in here, see all like how this incredible setup is. You know, we've got a mural from the what was 500 years ago or something behind me here. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. And it's like beautiful, right? And that was the goal with what we wanted to set up. So we went super premium across the board. We went black box, Wolverson with all the gym equipment in here. And we, with the scales, I mean, the scales cost just under £8,000. We went Body Tracks, the brand new 2.0 Body Tracks for body composition. I
see some members sometimes like put their water bottles like resting on that, and I'm like,
get it off there.
If you knew, I was like, you don't want Jack coming around here because he will tear you off.
Yeah, absolutely right. The cosmetic work we did on the building wasn't enough.
No.
We had to like lime paint the whole building because it's grade 2 listed. So we lime painted it, and the painters were in for like 2 weeks.
That was like a
fun fact, fun story actually, Jake, for the pod. People will enjoy listening to this one. I don't like painting, nor does Jake. And I thought, get 2 painters in, get it quicker. Got 2 painters in, had them in for 5 days, and we're like, this lime paint doesn't even work.
Literally nothing was happening.
Nothing was happening to the walls, and we're like, so. This the paint or the painters? Are they just sitting, chilling, doing nothing? And then I went to the company. I said, look, lime paint, what's going on? He goes, guys, you got to put 1 layer of lime paint on and leave it for like 10 days because it gets whiter and whiter and whiter as it dries. And I was like, well, right, didn't know that. So we'd essentially wasted about £1,000 in painters coming in and doing the paint.
Well, it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, if you see somebody painting and you get there at the end of the day and you look at the walls and it doesn't look like anything's been done, we're going to question that.
Yeah.
Like, but it just made me laugh that obviously this guy that you spoke to was just like the lime paint expert and just was like, nope.
Yeah.
You got to wait 10 days.
So we had to wait 7 days and then got the painters back in again.
So that was money wasted.
Yeah, money wasted. Anyway, it all cost a lot of money for the refurb. We went black box flooring, really high quality flooring. That was quite a few £1,000s. For only about 900 square foot. And we obviously had a professional floorer come in to do that because Jake and I weren't about to start all that jazz as well.
And by the way he was moaning about his knees at the end of the...
Bless him.
Yeah. I kind of...
And obviously this building is... Like, he had to make so many cuts in this thing, and the flooring is literally like 1 inch thick.
Yeah, because obviously this is such an old building. Like, it's not just like a storage facility where it's just blank square space. It's like there's so many edges, there's so many, like even the floor is uneven as well. So yeah, he had a lot of work to do.
But the good news is we obviously spent £41,000 in startup costs here with pretty much all the things that we just mentioned. But what we did do is we negotiated a 2-month rent-free period with our landlord, who's awesome, and we pre-sold memberships, which meant we could cash flow from day one regardless of startup costs, which is great. So that's what we did, and that is what we tell every studio owner who's about to open a studio: pre-sale. Mm-hmm. Even if you're paying rent, just pre-sale.
Yeah, and the longer your rent-free period, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to be able to use those months to continue to cash flow the business.
Yep, 100%. So that's startup costs. Hopefully we covered pretty much everything there.
Is there anything else? I'm just trying to think if there's anything else we missed. Obviously, the equipment, the flooring, the
tech. You got to think of tech, like TVs. We've got 2 TVs in here. We've got iPads on the wall, things like that.
Security.
Music security, yeah. So, I mean, music security install. So we had a 2-camera internal install with music install and alarm install. And that was about 4.5, 5K.
But again, ways to save on that is like you could just have a portable speaper. Like,
if you want. Yeah, portable speaker works fine, especially if you've got 1 room. It's like a 2-room setup here, so it's slightly more awkward. You don't have to have internal cameras.
No, you can just have outside ones.
But you can just have, you don't technically need external cameras, especially when I
know some gyms that have a Ring doorbell like inside.
Yeah. Works fine. Yeah, it works fine. I do recommend alarm system though, but you can pick them up pretty cheap. Ours is wired in, so all these things just help keep the building safe and your investment safe. Always a good thing to do.
Monthly costs.
Yeah. Let's talk about monthly costs. So our rent is £1,133. per month. I don't actually know the price per square foot on that, so you can feel free to ask me in the comments, and I'll see that and go find out. But we're on a high street. We're 900 square foot, so 900 square foot. I think that's a really good rental to pay on the high street. But obviously, with high street buildings, they're getting less and less occupied at the moment. I'm walking through high streets, Jake, and I'm like, where is everyone?
Oh yeah, like I was walking through somewhere the other day, and every other unit was empty.
Yeah. So, but the cool thing is, we love being here. We love being on the high street. Doesn't mean our next one will be on the high street. Might not be. Who knows? But that £1,133 does include a service charge, but it excludes buildings insurance. Okay, so buildings insurance, I quote me, is 70 something pounds, I think.
This is a great lesson for me. I'm just listening to like actually what we pay for every month. I have no idea.
Coaches, £3,780 per month. They cost us
a little bit more than that.
Now they've had pay increases. It's over £4,000. Different tech, and you got things like Wi-Fi, all the boring stuff. You know, I don't need to tell you how much Wi-Fi is, guys. Public liability insurance, Wi-Fi, gas, electric, which is hardly anything here because it's so small.
And again, the benefit of using the equipment we use is hardly any of it is plugged into the wall, is it?
Yeah. You got to think about merch. We amortize merch throughout the whole year. Amortize, basically, guys, if you're paying, £600 for something, you'll divide that down over 12 months. So that's how we slot it into our profit and loss. So total monthly costs, approximately £6,000 to £6,500 over the course of the month. I'd say that's about right, with everything.
So just to kind of conclude,
like
the startup cost, I think we could have definitely saved a lot of money there. I think the monthly cost, like, we can't really change that. Like, that is what it is, isn't it? Essentially, there's not really any kind of
you can't really do much the monthlies.
No, but like the startup is something that I think you could definitely do. I mean, like you said, like the scales, for example, you don't necessarily need body scan scales, do you? Like, you can just
body tracks scales.
Yeah,
body scan scales, doesn't matter.
No,
but you're right. You don't necessarily need them. A quick three tips. I mean, we did do a podcast last week about opening under 10K, so go listen to that because we give a lot of that stuff away. But I mean, we could have made that 4120 easily by just going secondhand good equipment, getting a £500 pair of scales rather than £8,000 scales, cutting the flooring in half with the amount spent, but just going with a different brand. And those are the things that actual customers wouldn't care about.
No,
necessarily. They wouldn't know.
No,
regardless, because they walk in here. And I always say, no one, like general population, don't know the difference between black box and mirror fit.
No,
right? They're both at different ends of the cost spectrum. So just remember that, like, we spent £41,000 because we could, but you don't have to, right? And you can make it significantly cheaper than that. Another one is to negotiate, obviously, rent-free periods, to negotiate down rent deposits. A lot of landlords will ask for 3 or 6 months up front. Maybe try to negotiate 1 month up front. So things like that to make it a lot easier for yourself. If the cosmetic work, if you've got someone in the family who does all that stuff, you could call in some help.
Yeah,
you know?
Just be resourceful.
A good friend of mine, her dad is a handyman and did like a week's work for free, bless him. Dads sign up for that when they become a dad, don't they? And got the studio ready for her, and it was done, and it cost her nothing.
Yeah,
right.
That's crazy
because dad's dad, right? So stuff like that is just really simple. So we could have cut that in half by just doing those simple things. But remember, if you're getting secondhand stuff, you can either pay outright for that secondhand stuff, or most places you can go interest-free finance, but that adds on to your monthly cost, remember. So it depends on how you guys want to roll it, and how you can cash through the business. But yeah, really, really easy for us to half that at least.
Yeah, which we'll probably will be doing for the next one, won't we?
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, quick one from us. If you're enjoying this episode, you'll love our free weekly newsletter.
It's for current and aspiring studio owners who are looking for the latest growth hacks to sign up more members and keep them.
It's a quick 2-minute email covering the stuff we're testing in our own gyms.
So you'll be getting access to what's working today.
If you're interested, you can join 3,500 gym owners and go to thefitpreneur.com and subscribe.
That's thefitpreneur.com. Anyway, back to the episode.
I've got here just looking at the lease and to bring those costs down and what you kind of want to look for. We've got negotiation tips on lease. I think this can be a whole separate podcast.
Well, I think definitely a newsletter should go out soon about this, because I think this is such an under-discussed topic when it comes to launching a fitness studio, is how to negotiate that lease. And we've said it multiple times. If you get that wrong, then you're paying the price for your whole terms, right? So I think like there's definitely things that you can do to put yourself in the best position possible at the start of your tenancy.
Yeah, so things that you can negotiate. Obviously, terms are terms of the lease, right? So they include things like your monthly rent, rent periods, break periods, rent reviews, all those kind of things, right? So you can negotiate. All of those things, believe it or not, are up for negotiation. So when you see a commercial property on Rightmove, for example, and it says, £1,500, that's like a house saying £300,000, right? You don't have to pay that. You can negotiate that as much as you want. And the landlord can choose whether to say yes or no and negotiate with you. It's up to them, right? So always leave the ball in their court. So you can negotiate that. You can negotiate rent-free periods. I always ask for a heavy rent-free period and negotiate down. But you got to remember, if you're doing pre-selling memberships, you won't have any cash flow for the first 2 or 3 months. So you want to make that rent-free period as long as possible. So try and get 3 if you can. The length of the lease, the break in the lease. We sign a lot of, we've just signed a 15-year deal on one of our locations, but we signed a 6 here. Negotiating 6s I think that's a good term of lease.
And this is something that gets overlooked as well. Actually, the length of the lease is a good thing. Like the longer you're there, I think some people might look at like, 15 years, I've got to somehow manage to keep this business alive. You know, like you got to change that mindset and look at it like an asset that your business now has, which is 15 years in the location.
But you got to also remember you have tenant breaks as insurance.
Yeah.
So the tenant breaks are your insurance. So whenever we sign a 6, we get a 3 as a tenant break. So if we want to leave after 3, we can, right? With a 15-year sign, we got a break at 5 and 10, right? So we have breaks in there as insurance. Article 54, Landlord and Tenant Act, that gives you the auto right to renew at the end of your lease term. So what you don't want to happen at the end of 6 years, them going, cool. The landlord going, I'm going to use my location for something else now.
I'm going to change that gym into a vegetable chopping studio.
Okay, because they can, right? So you want to try and make sure that you are within that act. Breakpoints, rent reviews. Rent review is basically the landlord being able to review the rent. So that's normally done on a fixed basis. So they can rent review on market rate, or they can rent review on an indexed basis, which tracks inflation. I would always try and make sure it's on an index basis because that helps you. If inflation trends down, they're not going to decrease your rent, believe you me, but they can at least leave it the same.
And the market rate you just mentioned there, that's basically on neighboring units, right?
What the market's doing.
Yeah.
So that can be, they'll look at comparables on your, probably on, like for us, it would be on the high street comparables, what the market's doing in different similar towns.
Yeah.
That's what they'll do, and they'll increase it from there.
Yeah. So if you're in a very sleepy town, then suddenly Costa opens up down the road and they're paying a significant amount in terms of their lease, then that would have an impact on you.
That can, but you can negotiate anything, right? So if Costa move in and they're paying £2,000 a month to their landlord, and you're paying £1,000, and your landlord wants to put you up to £2,000 because Costa are at it, you can negotiate them and down to what you need to. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much tips for negotiating lease. Obviously, there's lots of detail in that. I think that's a great newsletter and pod.
I think,
and comment below if you actually want to hear that, because I don't want to spend loads of time if people don't care.
I think like definitely mapping out what some of those terms mean. I think just almost having like a blueprint of like, okay, when I see the words Article 54, I can look at something and I know exactly what it means. I think that would be really useful for
we can do that. And we start working with most of our clients before they sign a lease. So they'll start working with us because they'll need help with
This
negotiating terms and like what to go back to a landlord with, like, because a lot of people get stuck. And then if you get stuck, you're taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So
we've covered the startup costs. We've covered the monthly costs. Ways to negotiate that lease, which we'll dive deeper in a future episode. Talk me through, and literally this is me asking you because I have no idea.
Yeah.
Talk me through some of the financial management practices that we undertake as a business that allows us to obviously cash flow, be profitable, all that kind of thing, but also have something there should anything in the studio break, for example.
Yeah. So before, I mean, we laid out a lot of this before we even signed a lease here. And the really cool thing, I will say this to the audience right now, we laid out a profit and loss projection for this location. And we were pretty much bang on for so we laid out 2 years. And the growth over the first, we in month 8 or 9? I don't know.
No,
But
8, just gone 8.
Yeah, so I sit down monthly and renew that, and we're pretty much bang on that we set out our numbers at the start, which is quite awesome because that shows like we've had experience obviously already, which helps. But we got it pretty much bang on just because we knew what it would take for us to acquire a client because we've had so much practice. So yeah, that was quite impressive. I was quite happy with that. But cash flow forecast, obviously, we had set up because your startup cost, so £41,620 for us, for example, we needed to make sure that we could fund those losses moving forward with cash flow, right? So we've equated those losses back now already, obviously in month 9, and now we're starting to make money on the year. But we were moving in to a few podcasts ago. We obviously laid out our big move, which didn't happen. Now that profit and loss, we had like 47k of losses in the first year. So that's just cash flow forecasting, which everyone needs to do. If you're going to run a business, like you got to run it properly. And so many studio owners have no idea of their numbers, and frankly, it's embarrassing. So you need to make sure you have a grip on this, because if you don't,
we can catch up with you, can't
you're
we?
flying blind.
Yeah.
So profit loss spreadsheet, cash flow forecast. You obviously need to look at budgeting and all that basic stuff. Like when we did this location, we had a ledger which made sure that we kept up to date with what we were spending and when.
That
and
kept
what
getting bigger, didn't it?
Yeah, that ledger kept on.
Every day there'd be another transaction on that ledger.
Yeah, which was fun. But yeah, it was great. So those are kind of what I would make sure you keep up to date with. Peter Drucker sums this up: what gets measured gets managed. Peter Drucker has amazing books, and I've read many of them. I'd recommend going to read them. But from a management standpoint of cash and money in the business, we follow the profit first method. Mike Moritz. I can't say his second name, but amazing book. So go read Profit First, because that shows how we manage the finances in the business on a monthly basis. So yeah, that's just some tips for me. And like when we start with a client, when we start working with them before their lease is even signed, we go through profit and loss stuff with them. Because often their numbers are way out of where they actually need to be. So always better to project worst case.
Yeah, because then the worst case is your baseline, isn't it? It's like you can then build from that.
You're often happy.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're right, I see so many studio owners map everything out at the beginning and almost like make they make kind of like they put reasons in place for them not to have to fund that expense. It's like, oh, I'll just do that, or like, oh, I'll be able to sort something out later down the line. Or it's actually no, you need to put every single number in there, because, like you said, what gets measured gets managed. So,
and the problem is when inexperienced new studio owners are laying out profit and loss projections and the cash flow and everything, they very often don't actually input their own distribution into that projection.
True.
So they project without paying themselves, and then what happens is they fall in line with that projection. so they don't pay themselves. Right? I've seen it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
over and over again. You need to project with your own distribution in
as a
in that
expense.
forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then you can understand what the true losses you're funding.
And that can correlate with the business growth as well, can't it?
Yeah.
So it's not like you're having to choose what your salary is over, the next 12 months. It's actually finding a number that works in tandem with that member number as well.
Yeah. So then if you're borrowing money, for example, if you're going to a bank and borrowing money, it's a lot easier to understand how much you're going to need,
Yeah.
right? Because if you borrow 20K and you spend 20K, well,
Yeah.
how are you going to pay yourself?
Yeah.
So you can step up your distribution quite easily, right? So if you borrowed 30, spend 15 on your initial, you have 15K over a 6-month period to pay yourself if you need to start with, like obviously monthly costs and things, we pay coaches 4K a month from day one. You can take 50% of those sessions yourself, as we recommend our coaches. We always want them taking no more than 50% as soon as they open, because it means we're jumping from thing to thing a bit, but that's fine. But if they're taking 50% of sessions, they have time to operate, take sales consults, follow up with leads, all that kind of stuff they need to be doing.
Grow the business.
Yeah, grow the business. We obviously didn't take sessions from day one. That's the way we chose to do it. But that meant we had to fund more losses in year one. So projecting out and actually running your business like a pro is really, really important. And people need to do it. Otherwise, you're not gonna succeed.
100%. God, that was a complex episode. That was a lot for my little head.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads that goes into that. Like, we could show you actually all of our monthly costs stacked out.
I think the newsletter does, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you go back to a few issues, thefitpreneur.com link is in the description. If you go back a few issues, we break down every single cost within that, so you can actually see what our ledger looks like.
Yeah, you go and see that. Like, we could have got deeper into it, but frankly, you'd been bored. So you can go read that. But that startup cost, monthly cost, we've gone over kind of negotiation tips for lease, financial tips for us that you should need to get right before you open your own business and open your own studio. If you don't have those things in place, you are setting yourself up to fail. So make sure you do have those.
Cool. That is it.
Anything else? Is that a wrap?
Back fresh from the Disney cruise with a new episode.
With no tan.
But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, guys, and we will catch you in the next episode.
That's the pod.